Hello and welcome to Season 4 of On the Irregular with me, Java Berry. In previous seasons, I've chatted to women from all walks of life about their unique creative journeys, how they got here and how their story has shaped their creative process. For this season, I wanted to specifically explore the way in which grief informs the creative process, how transformative it can be, and how it weaves its way through our lives in many tangled ways, how it manifests in our work, and how we navigate the endless twists and turns. I cannot wait for you to hear these conversations. Each one moved me in a profound way and often made me laugh and cry simultaneously. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to On the Irregular Season 4 on creativity and grief. In this episode, I am talking to gardener and allotmenteer Heidi-Lee Gregory. In 2020, having experienced a sequence of losses and readjustments in her life, Heidi turned her back on 20 years in the corporate world and decided to start from scratch and completely change direction with her path. We talk about Heidi's move from her native South Africa to the UK, losing her father at a young age, then the process of losing her beloved grandparents, the realisation that she did not want to have children despite always expecting to be a mother, and how her work in helping people design their dream gardens fulfills her creative desires. Welcome to my conversation with the extremely lovely Heidi-Lee Gregory. Welcome, Heidi, to On the Irregular. It's so lovely to meet you face to face because we've kind of emailed and been in touch on Instagram over the years, and you were featured. I advertised your business in the last season. I think it was your beautiful gardening business. So it's so lovely to now get a chance to talk to you. Really,
me too.
Thank you. So, if you'd like to start telling me a bit about your background. You were born in South Africa. You now live in the UK. If you'd like to go ahead and tell me a bit more about yourself, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So I grew up in South Africa. Well, I spent my first 5 years in Zimbabwe, and then lived in South Africa till I was 18. And then, I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. We couldn't really afford to go to university. South Africa was such a mixed bag for us. Like, life was quite difficult for my family. My mum had remarried and moved to the UK. So, somebody said, why don't you go to the UK and just go and experience the UK and see.
Yeah, just see what happens. Because did you have
see what happens.
Did you have UK heritage or family or any connections?
My grandparents on my dad's side were from the UK, so I could apply for an ancestry visa. For some reason, I went for a working visa, so I could come for 2 years just to see if it actually worked for me before I committed to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I came for 2 years, loved it. It was really exciting. It was a completely different world for me. I could be so independent, and there's a lot of opportunities for me. So I went back to South Africa, got all the paperwork in line. I spent 3 months there, getting like my dad's birth certificate, and got my ancestry visa and came back, and it's been over 20 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about your love of traveling in the email that you sent over, and I guess that's a young age to really like uproot completely, move to a new place, but then to realize that this is actually a good thing, like I'm really enjoying this, then that kind of opens up the world to you, doesn't it?
Yeah. So my moving to the first time I came to the UK was the first time I ever flew anywhere. So it was absolutely nerve-wracking flight. It was a complete mess. But after that, I think my first ever trip was to Venice for a weekend, and then I went to Morocco, and then I started to realize how amazing traveling was. And then I've traveled a lot since then. That's been a big part of the time I've been here.
Mm-hmm.
What else about I said about my business. So my main job has been in kind of IT and HR for many years. And then more recently set up my garden planting design business.
Yeah.
Which I think I'll go into a bit more later. But yes, that's what I do.
So you came to the UK, and like you're saying, like university wasn't an option. So did you
No.
come and start working immediately and went straight into IT?
Well, I spent 3 months in Leicester with my mum and got some odd door-to-door sales jobs, like
Hmm.
knocking at people's doors, trying to convince them to change
That
their
takes a
gas and
lot of,
electricity.
yeah, nails.
Not
Yeah.
for me, yeah. And then I had a cousin in London, and he contacted me and said, "Get yourself to London. What are you doing?" So I slept on. They stayed in share houses, my two cousins down the road from each other. I slept on their sofas for 4 weeks. They gave me a 4 week deadline, gave me a travel card, and told me to go to the job centre every day. And I did, and I got a job in a hotel doing HR, which is more just an admin job. But I think because it was an HR administrator, it kind of opened up doors for me later.
Yeah.
So I moved to Scotland for a few months, worked at a bar, and then, sorry, after London, moved to Scotland for a few months, and then went back to Leicester and worked with my mum for a few days at British Gas. And somebody came over and said, "Oh, you've got HR experience or payroll, we want to train you up." And that kind of opened up the doors to that. So I worked in this payroll job for a few years and then got moved to Basingstoke because they sold part of the company. And then I was there for about 10 years. And then went to McLaren. Yeah, so my job kind of went from HR payroll into a more technical job. And it's kind of gone from there until the point I've fallen out of love with it. Like I could keep going and get more and more technical, but it's not, I'm more of a creative person. And this job, I've kind of just followed it because people just kept giving me opportunities.
Yeah.
People kept approaching me and saying, "We want to give you a bit more money. We want you to move here." And I just said yes to everything. And then, it paid for my travels. It paid for everything. It paid for, a pretty good life. So I couldn't really say no to all the opportunities. But I think you get to a point that you think, what am I actually doing? Where I don't want to be a manager or director. This is just not me. Like the whole corporate world is not me. I worked at McLaren because I got approached by a recruiter, and it was just this weird world of like this incredible architecture and all these people in suits and heels. And somebody said to me, one of my colleagues, "You really don't fit in here, do you?" And I was like, I've been there for like a month. I was so like shocked and hurt, but I thought, he's absolutely right. I don't. And how can he see through me so easily? Like I didn't look like I fitted in.
Yeah.
But like, I think I was good at my job, and eventually I left because I got offered a job somewhere else. So it doesn't really suit me, and I've kind of realized that. But it's quite hard to then think, what do I do after 20 years? How do I then change? Like I've built up my salary, I've built up my career, I've built up my name and doing what I do. But I don't really want to do this.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
a huge decision to I guess, and a huge risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, because like there's times when I look back at opportunities that I had that I was in and there was space for me to grow, and I turned them down because I was like, no, this isn't what I want. And sometimes I do look back and I go, but I would have probably like a monthly income and would know where I stand with my mortgage and my bills now. So it's so hard. It's so hard to make that decision. I know, but you've done it, and like it's incredibly brave, and it's also about being really truthful and honest with yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I said before, look, it's interesting, me, my brother and my sister have all been quite similar in kind of what we've pursued in life. And I think it's a reaction to our life in South Africa. We've all chosen to have really secure homes, secure jobs. Well, not necessarily secure jobs, but jobs that pay well, or like all of that, which I just think is quite interesting to watch all three of us, because we're all quite creative as well. But we've chosen that specifically.
Yeah. I can really relate to that because like my family growing up, all very creative, no money at all, as in like no kind of like family money. There are people who can be creative and have no money, quote unquote, but there's a nest egg there. We never really, there was nothing there. So when my mum was freelance all her life, my biological dad, who was a musician, and we weren't with him for very long anyway. And then my stepdad, who I call my dad Jim, he was a musician as well. He had a bit more, but still it was like feast or famine. And from a really young age, I was so conscious and aware, because my mum was just really open about money. She was like, right, okay, well, this week we're eating potatoes, or like my dog walking money, my babysitting money, that would go into the food money for the week. And from a really young age, and so I just was always conscious. So I remember like very young just thinking, right, I need to make money when I'm older. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But for a long time, I really did feel like I just want something stable. I just want to know where I stand. I don't want to feel this kind of like constant up and down. So I really get that. Whereas I think my brother, I see him kind of being more focused on like, nah, I want something more stable for my life and financially viable, which, to be perfectly honest, the way the world is now, is anything financially viable? Is any job safe? It's kind of like everything's just up in the air, isn't it? But I can completely, and I really relate to that like having come from family where money isn't in abundance, you know
Yeah.
the alternative. So I mean, God, you spoke about so much in your email about your family and your experiences and experiences of grief in so many different ways. And you spoke about how when you went back to South Africa, after you'd been in the UK for 2 years, you went and spent quite a bit of time with your dad. And then on your return, am I right in saying that he passed?
Yeah. It was a bit of a crazy time. I'd always had a bit of a rocky relationship with my dad. Luckily went back. This was when I went back after my 2-year working visa, to get all the paperwork in place to come back for my ancestry visa. And I hadn't spoken to my dad for ages, and got to spend a bit of time actually sitting and talking with him and forgiving, and just kind of spending time together after so long. And I think it was about 3 months. 3 months that was in South Africa. Yeah. So I'm so glad I got to have that. I had no idea. It was to say, I also went to Zimbabwe to get my dad's paperwork, and had a similar thing with my grandfather who adopted my dad, spent some time with him, and came back to the UK. And it was literally the next day, I think, I got a phone call to say my dad had passed away. So I had to fly back to South Africa. Like, I didn't even I'd spent all my money on going to South Africa. I didn't even have any, like, I had nothing. My mum didn't have any money for me to go back. I thought, I'm not going to go to my dad's funeral. And one of my friends had just been made redundant and said, here's the money, just go. You can't not go to your dad's funeral. And gave me my money for my flight. So went back. Yeah, it was tragic. How
incredible to have had that time though with him just before then.
Absolutely. It was, I think it would have been really hard if I hadn't, like to lose someone when you just don't have a relationship and there's so much unsaid stuff.
Yeah.
It was meant to be.
And you must have been quite young at that point. So what, 20 or
20? Yeah.
That is young to lose a parent.
Yeah.
Wow. And so then, you've spoken about other, griefs that you've experienced, and then eventually, and you can please go into whatever you would like to go into, but just kind of like as a sweeping overview, by the time the big C came around, COVID and lockdowns, it sounds like you were really, it kind of at breaking point by this. Yeah.
So I think over the 20 years I was here, like a lot obviously happened. I've always been this like extremely outgoing, confident person, love life, did all my traveling. I met Chris, who's my husband now, about, well, I don't know, we've been together 12 years now. So for nearly 10 years we were together, and we had no intention of settling down just yet. We just had loads of fun, going to concerts and festivals and traveling as much as we possibly could. And I think knowing at some point we were going to settle down. So we need to have all this fun now, like just, we weren't saving any money. not buying a house, nothing. We were just having a really good time, which was great. So yeah, over that time, yeah, because I guess there's two things that happened in parallel with each other, which led to this kind of huge thing in my life. One was my grandparents. So they've always, a life in South Africa, we moved so many times. My parents had multiple different jobs. They divorced. It was messy. Everything happened. My grandparents were my constant. They were the one thing. We went to their house every year for our school holidays. We spent so much time with them. They were, yeah, the one constant for me, my brother and sister. And over this period, they obviously started getting older and their health was deteriorating, particularly my grandfather. And to the point that he had quite a bad stroke. And then my mum, I don't know how, I have no idea how she did it, but she managed to get a visa for them to move to the UK, which is nearly impossible under the circumstances. They've got no right to really be here, but she proved that she needed to look after them and they came over. So, which was great, but selfishly, for me, I kind of lost this connection to South Africa and this constant home, and they're kind of uprooted. It was amazing because they're going to be close to me, but I had this kind of sick feeling in my stomach that I didn't have this home to go back to in South Africa anymore. So that happened, and I felt a bit uneasy about it. Equally, my grandfather wasn't quite the same person when he came. He had like multiple mini strokes, and so I spent as much time as I could with them. And eventually my mum and my gran couldn't cope and moved into a care home, which completely broke me. It was like, I can't even say, it was worse than my dad dying. It was just like, I just thought they didn't care anymore. I couldn't understand why they couldn't look after him, how he could be too much. Like, I just didn't get it. And I went to the care home and I thought it was awful. And yeah, he got dementia, which was horrible. And I think though he died later, it was that kind of care home bit where I felt like I'd lost him. And yeah, that was like a huge thing for me. And I spent a lot of time grieving and being angry with people. And yeah, eventually COVID came, and he was one of the first people in the care home that got COVID and died from it. So that was, yeah, but I don't know, his death was like more of a release and a release.
Yeah, there's a relief in knowing that they're not in pain or confused or...
Yeah, and it's not alone there anymore in this home. I mean, I'm sure they found that, I don't know. I was really, really close to him, and I just, yeah. It was a horrible place. Parallel to that, Chris and I got married after about 10 years being together. And all of a sudden, for so long saying we were going to have a family, the reality of it kind of hit me. And the idea and the reality are two completely different things. I was in my mid-30s. And I just started to panic about it. I like quietly at first. And then I couldn't be so quiet about it. I was crying all the time. Yeah. Kind of just the whole thing took over. I knew that a decision had to be made. I had to do it like sometime soon because I was nearing the end of my fertility years. Is that the right? I feel a doctor once said to me years ago, 35, she said, don't come back to me and ask again when you're 35. So I always had this number in my head. And then we got married, I think, when I was 35. And I was like, this is it. It's got to be now. And I thought, I can't. I'm just like, I haven't finished traveling. I know we've done so much, but I just didn't. I had so many reasons in my head, and they're all personal reasons, aren't they? Because everybody's different. But I think the big thing was, Chris and I had said we would do it, and I'd never voiced any opinion that I didn't want to. I'd never said that to anyone. I didn't know why I was feeling so uneasy and so panicky about the whole thing. We talked about it. like 2 years before that had been really stressful. I'd changed jobs, we'd bought a house, I'd been commuting, so I'd had a short job for a while. We'd commuted a lot at the same time as planning for our wedding, and then changed jobs again. So I had this like period of extreme busyness,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything kind of stopped. So we were married, we were at home, and I was like processing what's going to happen next. Like, this is, I just don't know if I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a delayed stress.
Yeah.
So I should have been stressed during that whole period, but afterwards, now when I'm kind of going through this decision time, my body just started to react from the stress. I like bled for months. I had like really bad skin and scalp. I had like muscular, my back was really sore, my neck. It was all this crazy stuff. And every time I saw a doctor or professional, they said, I think it's stress. We've done all the tests and we can't put it down to anything else. I think you need to stop. And one day I was driving home and I'd never had one before. I've never been somebody who suffered from anxiety or anything. I've just been quite a consistent person. A mega panic attack. I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't really know what the symptoms of a panic attack were. I called Chris and said, I think I'm having a panic attack, and told him where I was. By the time he turned up, I pulled over in my car and I'd like lost control of everything. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. My like muscles had all cramped and my fingers had curled up and my legs and everything. So I thought it was a stroke because I just could hear like black noise in my ears. He had called an ambulance by then, and by the time they got me in the ambulance and got me to calm down and done all the tests, said it was a panic attack. And I was absolutely mortified. I thought, how a panic attack? Like, that's so embarrassing that I got an ambulance for, like, but yeah, he didn't know, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I would have, I do know now, but I don't know how I would have stopped it in that, like, I just lost control. So yeah, that was a huge thing for me. Like, since it happened, I've spoken to lots of people about it. I found out that lots of people that I'm close to have panic attacks all the time. I've got friends that have had them for years, and nobody ever told me that. I didn't know they were all going through that. For me, I've had one, and I've come close to having a few since then, but I'm so aware of it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I used to carry around paper bags with me just in case it happened again. Yeah, it was a life-changing thing for me. I knew something had to change. I was like I got signed off work for weeks. I went back to work and I got signed off again. It was like a rippled effect after that. So I went from being an extrovert to an introvert. I spent about a year at home not seeing anyone. I went back to work, but I didn't really socialize and didn't really talk to friends. The paramedic had said, I think, have you got a dog? You should consider getting a dog. So we got a dog.
To get you out of the house,
she just said they're really good in these kind of, like, if you've had a panic, I don't know, I can't remember what the reason was, but I think she said something about going home, and it's really good to be around a dog in these kind of circumstances. But yeah, for us it was quite like life-changing, just getting out every morning and just having a dog in the house was quite a big thing, in a positive way. Yeah, and then I just started spending a lot more time outside. Like, I took up cold water swimming and a lot more time in my garden. I redid the whole garden. So just not long after this, after I'd gone back to work, COVID came, and it was like a massive gift for me. It was at the point that I knew I should really start probably seeing people again. It had been a really long time and I really need to get back to normal life. And all of a sudden there was lockdown and I was so happy I could be locked away again.
No expectations. Well, I have to be housebound. We all do, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I got an allotment. Yeah, I've had therapy through it, but I've put in a lot of kind of measures, therapies, things in place to
support yourself.
Yeah. And obviously had long conversations with Chris. And he's just always been amazing supporting husband, and was absolutely adamant that no matter what we do in life, we're going to do it together, whether it's with or without children. Which, yeah, I've got friends who haven't got as supportive partners, but yeah, so I'm very lucky.
So all this going, yeah, it sounds like so many things kind of came to a head. You know, the grief you'd experienced, your grandparents, and that was interesting what you were talking about, feeling the loss of your connection to South Africa when they came over here. It's like, well, where are you rooted? You know, where are you
Yeah.
rooted at? So however happy or content you might be in the UK, it's like, but I think, yeah, we do often kind of feel like, but where would I go back to? Isn't there always somewhere that you would go back to? And so there's grief in that as well, of, you know, of letting go and
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge. And then from what it sounds like, you know, you always felt a little bit like a fish out of water with work, and
Yeah.
and like, you know, that it was even identified by others, like you might be good at your job, but you completely, you know, don't fit in. And then yeah, I guess that realization of, I think you wrote a bit in your email about, and it's something that's come up in several conversations that I've had about grieving the person that you thought that you would be, that you might be. And the thing is, there are so many versions of, in a way, of who we could be, and you can just you can think of all these wonderful things, and you'll never know, but that grief is real. That grief, because in some ways, when you imagined it, it was real. It was completely real. It was vivid, and you could visualize it. So to then come to terms with, well, okay, I'm not going to be a mother, and it's not just I'm not going to be. I actually don't want to be a mother, and that's a huge mental shift. And it really sounds like your body was letting you know so clearly, like, no, this
Yeah.
is not the right thing for you. It's almost kind of like some kind of like internal wisdom
Yeah.
kind of came out. It's like, no, I actually, you know. And so it is mad, isn't it, sometimes, like how the body manifests that, like what you were just describing about your backaches and like your scalp and the stress and your skin and all of
Yeah.
this, just like, and nobody being able to pinpoint what it is, like
Yeah.
that's your body just kind of really telling
Yeah.
you.
Before that, I'd never really thought, I'd always kind of known people with stress, and I'd thought I'd experienced stress, like, oh, I'm feeling stressed at work. Everybody says it.
Yeah.
I'd never really seen or heard of or experienced physical stress, like your
Yeah.
body actually reacting
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Acutely.
physically and so, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can only be stress. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
no,
it
that's so
is, is it
extreme.
an illness? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's like, you know, it's talked about a lot more, I think, about the severity of it. You know, it's because it can be such a throwaway comment, can't it? Like, oh, I'm just so stressed. But like, you know, we're all carrying so much stress around us. There's so many things that we're trying to meet, and so many things that we're trying to do, and the expectations that we have of ourselves and that others have, or that we think of others have. And the world's so busy, and we're constantly just trying to figure out, okay, well, where's my place in it? And then just noise and the internet.
Yeah.
It's so full on. It's so full on. So yeah, that sounds like kind of quite a natural thing to have arrived at that point. And you talked as well about how you knew that you didn't want to carry on with your work, and so you take on a work coach, a career coach?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think after being signed off work the first time and going back, I had this, like, work hadn't really been the issue up to then. Everything else had been going on, and work was just on the side, carrying on. I went back, and slowly it built, but I became really unhappy at work. Like, just every day, everything, I just couldn't. Yeah, like what I thought was my career, and what I'd just been doing every day for so long, suddenly, it was an issue. So again, I got signed off a second time, and then I just, something has to change. I can't keep going in every day and being unhappy. And I think I said as well, I think when you experience grief or trauma, a bit like, and I think this happened with COVID with loads of people, this kind of collective trauma, like something has to change. Lots of change comes out of that. So it kind of triggers this rippled change in people. There are loads of people that changed career, or loads of people that just changed homes, or like a lot of change comes out of it. So I think through these COVID and me being signed off and all the stuff that happened, something had to change. I came out and I just couldn't, nothing sat easily anymore. And there's no way this could be my life for the next, like, I've got a long time left in my career. There's no way that this can be it. So I spent all my money on a career coach. I spent a long time trying to find someone. Like, I looked at quite a few, and they were all kind of corporate career coaches, so that would help you find a different corporate job. Yeah. And I thought, I don't just want to use transferable skills and go into, I need something completely different. I don't want to be sitting at a desk anymore. Like, yeah. I've got loads more skills. I've got loads more interests. I know I'm creative. I know I've got so much to offer, but I just can't. I had so many ideas. Like I had spreadsheets of ideas and all these things, businesses I could set up. And I thought, how am I ever going to figure out what to do? So yeah, I found a career coach who was kind of career/life coach. So she looked at everything as a whole, and worked with her for a few months, and was over COVID. And she was amazing. We worked through loads of job ideas, and quickly shut down lots of them, which I was like, oh yeah, no, I definitely don't want to do that. Why did I not think of that before? Like running a cafe. I was like, she was like, that is the job that most people want to do that come to her. And you've got to think of the reality of running a cafe. Like, do you, and in the end she was like, I think you just like drinking coffee in cafes. Like, you don't actually want to run a cafe. So yeah, and we came out with this garden planting design, which kind of incorporated, I've been working in my garden and helping people already, and I already do so much like design. It incorporated so many skills that I already had, as well as the business stuff. So like setting up a website, I was like, yeah, I can do that. And it was just like, why didn't I think of this before? Like all my skills brought into one place. So it's not as easy as that. Obviously, I had to set it up, and it's still quite new. And I'm still working through all of it, and I've still got my other job on the side until life becomes a bit more stable.
Because so you essentially help people design their gardens, don't you? You draw out designs for a specific, and it can be like tiny spaces, big spaces. I'm guessing their level of commitment to maintaining that space.
Yeah, so I try not to sell myself as a designer. So I do want to go and do a diploma and be able to sell myself as a designer. But I feel like design is like the structure, the hardcore, the building things. I don't really do that. So it's more around the planting itself. So I've just done a big garden in the New Forest, and they did want some design, but more in terms of, we have this huge 60-meter garden that's just a blank canvas. Where do we put our beds? Like, you've got to, we don't have beds that we just want to plant. We need to know where the beds are going to go. So I've kind of done an element of that. But yeah, in general, you'll come to me and say, I've got a bed, or a front garden or a back garden or both. I have no idea what I want to do. I just want it to be colourful and this, or I would love a cottage garden, but it's a north-facing shady garden. Or so I basically work through a list of questions with you, gather all the information from your garden, and then I'll go away and work out and give you a kind of like a paint by number pack of everything you need to create that. So I'll have researched the plant. If it's, I don't know, shady is the most easy example to explain, but I'll have found the plants that will suit your soil and your aspect and your climate, and I'll give you a shopping list and a little plan of exactly where the plants need to be planted, and a calendar of what you need to do to look after them and how you need to plant them and everything you need.
That's so
So
lovely. I was thinking, like, actually, some really lovely idea as a gift for someone. Like, because I can imagine that sometimes, I don't know, because I guess I'm just thinking myself sometimes, like, the things that we spend money on for ourselves, sometimes, we don't always process. But I can imagine just saying to someone, like, I know that you've got this space, you don't know what to do with, like, here's a person who can help you and who will do everything for you. I think that's such a beautiful idea. That's really
yeah.
lovely. Wow. And how do you like how does it fulfill it's like you were saying that you feel like you're creative in so many different aspects and so many different ways, and this is the one that you've kind of landed on for now, because who knows what
Yeah.
what you will do in the future. But how does this kind of hit those points of like, yes, that's what I need and that's what I enjoy and that's what it fulfills?
So it's used because I'm like out in my garden and the allotment and everything anyway. So it's got an element of the like planning. I am a planner. I love
Mhm.
spreadsheets. That is the kind of IT job in me. I've always done that. So going away
Yeah.
and researching and finding, and I will research it to the nth degree. So I absolutely know that these will suit what you have. I mean, I can't control the elements, but so there's that bit, the research that I love. So obviously all the plants and putting them together and putting like, I don't know, what works well together. How is this like picturing heights and structure and all of that,
Yeah.
how that's going to fit together. And I think that's quite creative and quite a skill to put these things, to create a garden. I think it's a
Yeah.
really lovely. So I've done it here, and then I get like, I'm like, that's the best part of a new garden. Like when you get a new house and you're gonna like what you're gonna do with it. You're giving that over to me to do for you. That's like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I feel like it's such a gift that people would let me do that
Yeah.
creation bit for them.
Yeah.
And then the actual plan. So each of the little, when I give you your plan, I do them as little hand-drawn drawings. So it's actually getting my pencils out again.
Mm.
And because I used to love art at school, I don't really do much of it anymore. So actually creating a beautiful little drawing that I think it's like a
Yeah.
little piece of art. So it's kind of incorporating my arty stuff and my research
Yeah.
spreadsheets and it's all virtual, so I get to do it from home at the moment. Maybe one day I'll incorporate some other parts of it because I give you the pack and then you go and plant it.
Mhm.
So that gives me some flexibility as well of
Yeah.
working wherever I want to work and being able to help people across the country wherever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a healing process, growing, planting, isn't it? I think knowing that you're offering over a plan for someone that they're probably going to enjoy and is going to be great for their mental health and their sense of satisfaction and seeing it come to life, as it were, I guess.
I've seen, a few people actually do it and send me pictures of this beautiful garden. I think, oh my gosh, you've actually done it, and it is beautiful, and all like seeing, and like other people, they've like referred other people and said, oh, I've seen so and so's garden in Winchester. Can you do mine? I think, oh, that's really nice. Like, but it looks nice enough that you want that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worked. So yeah,
That must
it was
be
good.
the best feeling. Oh, I can
Yeah.
imagine that. Wow. That's so gorgeous. That's so gorgeous that, yeah, lockdown was heavy and hard for so many, but in a way it was a kind of a window for you, a window of time and space to just kind of recalibrate, give yourself the downtime that you needed to kind of go inward and just focus on what you're doing and what you wanted to do and really listen to yourself and then
Yeah.
and come up with this. That's so beautiful.
I think
Oh.
it's so true. It's like the way you say it. It's like, yeah, that was actually meant to happen. You were supposed to stop going at 100 miles an hour and, yeah, actually take a moment and figure out what you are,
Yeah,
what you should be doing. I'm not just bumbling along doing what the next expected thing is.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's that's the thing, isn't it? Because I was talking to someone recently about grief, about having the space to grieve, um, and then if you don't have the space to grieve, it doesn't go away. It still
No.
comes out in other ways and often just kind of delayed, and then years later, you're faced with something that you've not dealt with, or I mean, there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different shapes that it can take, but just like how hard it is to actually A, allow yourself to have the space to grieve, and B, to find that space and time to grieve, because life doesn't stop. It just keeps going. You know, if you've got kids to look after. If you know, bills need paying, family, friends, shopping, everything, you know, and so, yeah, how do you fit in this huge, big, engulfing, all-encompassing tornado that grief can sometimes be? And so I can see, in some ways, to have had that space and to have allowed that, and it's really lovely as well that you really kind of lent into it. It sounds like you really committed to it. And
committed to grieving.
I'm
really lucky that I could, right? Like, not everybody can just do that and lock themselves away. I don't have children, and I could do it.
But not even if, you know, even if you did, it doesn't, you know, it's not that you're more virtuous or less virtuous by allowing yourself or not, but I think it's interesting, like the different ways that we can approach it and process it and allow ourselves to, and, you know, because I think there is often like a societal attitude of, even though we're having these conversations more and more and more, there is often an attitude of like, look, can you just get on with it now? Come on, like, if you're not moved on yet, just kind of like, you know, and just keep going, and productivity and blah blah. But these are the big stuff, and these big questions, these big feelings, then, like you said, exactly like you said, they raise questions, and they often, a lot of change comes out of it, which can be completely transformative and life-changing and really beautiful. Like you said, you know, you create beautiful gardens for people, which then carry on having their own lives, and then has a huge impact on that person's life, like mentally and like visually. So it's beautiful. Oh, Heidi, it's been so lovely to talk to you. So lovely, and just to get to know more about, like, your work and how you approach it, and get an insight into that, and just realize actually just like how full it is, like in all the respects that you were just saying now about like the things that you enjoy about it, but then also, you know, a garden is one of the most creative things that you can possibly do, and so you're also, in a way, you know, you're passing that on to someone else who can then enjoy that. So
empowering them. Thank you.
You can find Heidi on Instagram at Heidi-Lee.Gregory and online at HeidiLeeGregory.co.uk. You can also head to the show notes for links. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of On the Irregular on creativity and grief. Please remember to review and subscribe, as it makes all the difference in helping other listeners find us.